And we are live. JT here. Welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcasts. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focus on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. Before we hit live, we were both saying how it was something that we were enthused about and we were energized all day. And, I know that that's always a great foundation for a great conversation that's going to be filled with lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm, and lots of valuable nuggets. My guest in the huddle today is a Queens Gales alum. He is currently doing some amazing work at MLSE LaunchPad. My guest in the huddle today is Benji Arhen. How are you today, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So, you know what? Thank you for pronouncing the name that way. Usually people say Arhen, but we're changing the game today. We're going back to the roots. So JT, it's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you for recognizing me as someone who is worthy of a feature on this episode. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Absolutely, brother. And it's interesting how you talk about changing the game. I know that that's sort of like one of those core mantras that you're helping to further MLSE Launchpad and MLSE with let's change the game. So it's all timing, brother.
We're getting right into it. Yeah. It's incredible. I can't believe we segued into that from that. But yeah, MLSC has been absolutely incredible. And the foundation department for where I work, it's all about doing purposeful work. It's all about really figuring out ways to provide opportunities that a lot of youth, especially youth that look like me, can't access in sport. And so, changing the game research is something that has been rolling for a couple of years now. We're getting the ground rolling on this year's version of the change the game research, and it's all about really just changing the game of what sport looks like and actually going into the nitty-gritty, utilizing some great minds, some great leaderships, and getting some information out there and just bringing awareness to the public on what it requires to change the game from the ground up and from the top down. So yeah, it's I won't go into too much detail about that. We're going to see the report. We're getting kickstarted at the end of September, I think. So yeah, shout out to Brian Heel, who is the leader of that research. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. So excited to be a part of a team like that.
Awesome, brother. And I'm enthused to see what, sort of fact, what discoveries, what the research says. And again, I know we're going to learn more about, the amazing work you're up to as this conversation progresses. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to count my blessings. And for me, this is a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find the days where I'm most intentional with counting my blessings. I do find those days are filled with a little bit more love, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So just want to thank you again, brother, for blessing me and our community with some of your time and energy here.
Of course, man. Really appreciate it. Hey, grateful. Really grateful. Again, like I said, it's there's a lot going on in life right now in terms of being at Queens for so long and coming out now and meeting all these incredible people that I've like heard about or that I've connected with. And so I'm grateful to be here and to obviously give you my time and to get your time because I'm always happy to be able to have platforms where I can share my story, knowledge without knowledge that's not translated or shared is useless, right? And so I love taking the experience that I've had and the knowledge that I've acquired and being able to have platforms where I can share that. So thank you. That's a very long extended thank you, but yeah.
It's all good, brother. Now, one of the first things I'd like to do in the huddle is to remind others and remind myself that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a great friend and a great coach and colleague that always used to remind me that, hey, we all have these things that make us unique and different, so celebrate them. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Interesting fact. Well, I don't know if most people, I would say most people that know me know this, but I actually didn't start playing sports till high school and didn't start playing football till grade 12. So that's I think that's a pretty like in the moment I was just kind of going with it, but thinking about it now, especially being a coach, playing the game, especially football, and seeing how kind of ridiculous that is, to see where it got me, I would say that's pretty interesting. So if people didn't know that, now they know.
And what I love about that, it is very it goes very against conventional wisdom, right? Like there's this more of this push. I mean, you're in the research to like early specialization, getting kids to really choose a pathway early on. So I love the fact of you're a shining example that, when the time is right and you find, the vehicle, beautiful things can still happen.
100%. And you know what's ironic about that is that I would have loved, so I wasn't born in Canada. Born and raised in Ghana, West Africa, moved here with 5 brothers. Parents gave up a lot to be where we are right now. When we moved here, 2-bedroom apartment in not the best neighborhood in Brampton, Toronto, Ontario. And my parents did a lot to just try to just keep food on the table and have time for us. And so they weren't thinking about extracurriculars. And so it's ironic that I'm in a position right now where we are providing opportunities to people and youth that don't have these opportunities. I didn't optionally decide to not play football until grade 12. I couldn't afford it. I didn't know that it was accessible to me. I thought that it was so out of my reach. Getting a scholarship to a school like Queen's University wasn't even imaginable at the high school that I went to. And so it's incredible that we are now working. There's different organizations that are working to not only provide resources and provide space for youth to be able to gain these opportunities early on. Because again, I am an example of what, when I was able to actualize my potential through sport, where that took me. My life would have been a whole different ballgame if something didn't happen for me to be like, hey, I want to commit to football. I want to commit to being an athlete. I want to diversify myself out of sport. There's just so many pathways to it. But yeah, again, there's a lot of youth that were in the same boat as me that didn't have the opportunities to, that will never be able to get the opportunities to. So trying to continue to work to increase that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you shared that, and I appreciate you being so, open and honest with your lived experience. But it sort of reminds me of something a great coach taught me once, and he would often reference this idea that pain and purpose are the same coin. They're just different sides of the coin. And what he meant by that, and what I've come to learn, is that, it's interesting how your lived experience growing up, right? Your parents and your family immigrating to this country was a blessing, right? You were in a new country. There were more opportunities. But again, with that opportunity did come some challenges, right? You weren't able to access sport early on. But how interesting is that now that through your lived experience, right, you have gained strength and power and wisdom. And now you have found you're turning that previous pain into a purpose and making things more equitable, more diverse, more inclusive, more accessible. Like it's really like you almost needed to go through that to do inform what you're doing now. Like how beautiful is that?
That's incredible. You know, that was I'm gonna write that down. Pain and purpose or that is the biggest fact I have heard all year. It's insane because something that I've really been living through right now. Like I've really started to discover my purpose, and the discovery of my purpose. There's times where I look back and I'm like, gosh, what was I doing when I was young? I had no clue where, you know what I mean? It's like, and that all comes from people don't realize what lies on the other side of adversity. Like when you talk about pain and like there is this beauty in pain. There is this novelty in going through experiences and struggling, and there's literally a physiological change in your brain that is happening that starts to wire towards what you are meant to do. And it's the purpose is made up of little experiences, little, adversities that all come together to create a beautiful picture that all changes the way that you think, changes, okay, you know what, I thought this is what I wanted to do. And I went through a situation where it just made me realize it's like putting your hand on a hot stove. It's like, okay, that's not it, redirection, right? But in this day and age, it's really hard because a lot of people stop when they hit pain, stop when they hit adversity. And it's like, there's like a whole other side that's never been discovered outside of that. And so it's funny because something that I try to do in my daily practice now is I try to do something hard every day. I try to take something out of every negative experience that I go through. I'm one of those people that I get really, really anxious, and I get it from my dad. I like to be a control freak. I like to be in control of things that I can't control. And I've been really getting in tune with my spirituality and just realizing that there's just things that are meant to be the way that they are. We just don't know it yet. And they're supposed to create a space for us to actualize our purpose. And living in purpose is one of the most beautiful things because there's so many layers to discovering your purpose, so much pain and so much adversity and so much experience and story. And I'm still young, so this is me just speaking now. Who knows? There's still so much more to go to, but this is something that I'm so passionate about because I'm almost like reminding myself when I talk about it, like it's gonna come, but it's all to reveal what your purpose in the certain season of your life that you're in. You know what I mean?
And it sounds like, as you're sharing there, it's one of those things that, I mean, again, you've played sport at a high level, how many times have you heard from other high quality athletes or high quality coaches, the idea of trusting the process, right? And it's almost one where it's like, how many times have you heard that? But really, what is trust, right? And it's having, like you shared, that deep belief, that faith that everything is like, I'm going to come out stronger, more powerful on the other side of this, right? And sometimes it's just literally putting one foot in front of the other, right? And again, it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, 100, man. And it's so funny because like I went and visited Queens a couple of weeks back, and I went to go talk to my old coach, Coach Snyder, and I just went into his office and I'm like, Coach, thank you. That I didn't know what you meant then, but I know now. Thank you. Because again, when we're also younger, we don't understand. It's very hard, So one of the life skills that we teach at MLSE Foundation and Launchpad is self-regulation and emotional intelligence, critical thinking. The very important thing is like self-regulation. And when you go deeper into that, it's emotional regulation. And so the way that I kind of look at it is like being able to put a pause to emotional responses and try to balance it out with logical reasoning. And it's hard when you're younger to do that. And why do I say this? It's a lot of the times, if you lost the game, you know what I mean? What are your emotions telling you? I'm angry. I did all that for what? I'm putting in all this work. I'm not good enough, right? But you take a step back. And right now I look at all the adversity, all the injuries that I went through, even, not my last ever football game, I was injured. And I didn't know it was gonna be my last game because 2020 was COVID. And then life changed, and then I decided I wanted to go through another path. And there were times where I would look back at it and I was like, dang, like that was tough. Did I make the right decision? But then when you're able to really look at the process of all the things that got you to making that decision and thinking, oh, that was the wrong decision in the moment, and then knowing where you are now, just, oh man, I get really, really fired up when I talk about it, because that once foot forward analogy that you just talked about was something that I heard all the time. Trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. But I never really understood what that meant. It just sounded like some cliche saying that it was like, it's just an excuse to get people to, continue doing the work, I guess. So it's huge, man. It's huge. It's huge.
So I'm curious, you come from a background where you were a high quality athlete, and you're in this new and beautiful transition, new adventure, and you're becoming a high quality coach. I'm curious, you shared some of the amazing life lessons that are inherent in sport. I'm sure that if I were to ask you what life lessons you've taken away, you could probably create a laundry list. But I'm curious, at this stage of your journey, what would you say is that, a lesson you've taken from sport that you still find yourself applying to other areas of your life today?
That is a great question. I think a lesson that I've taken from sport that I still apply is the results of the work. And that's really, really broad. And that kind of goes through, like, there's a lot of different components to that. But, when I used to play football, I was one of those guys that I stayed in Kingston every single summer. I didn't really know what I was doing at that time, but I just knew that it was something that I needed to do. And sometimes when I wasn't even intentional about the work that I was trying to put in, it just showed on game day. And then I always used to remember coaches talk about, how, like, good coaches talk about how important everything you do translates to life afterwards. And I didn't understand what that really meant. So once I really started comprehending that, especially in this past year where I was intentional about the work and almost detaching the work from the outcome, just knowing that as long as you're putting your best foot forward, and you have the right intentions and you are doing the work, the results will be inevitable. And often the results are greater than anything you could have ever imagined. And it took me a while to realize, oh my goodness, that's a huge thing that sport taught me. And it's an umbrella term for, time management, critical thinking, self-accountability, just taking criticism. Like, these are all things that you have to work at. And in that moment, you're like, what's going on? And it just becomes unconscious things that happen in the real world. And I haven't been in the real world for long, but I think I have very, very strong saying this, because it's still the transition is still very new to me, where I'm almost immediately aware when I see these things like materialize. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's a huge lesson, or a huge thing that I've learned, is the result of putting in the work. Even though the result is not supposed to be the outcome, it's inevitable. It is inevitable no matter what. As long as you put in the day-to-day, whatever that is, you try to sharpen your craft, you try to be the best version of yourself in everything that you do, the results are going to be greater than anything you ever anticipated. So that's a huge answer, but as you can tell, I like to get right in it.
Yeah. No, it sounds like, again, those, beautiful critical thinking skills that have allowed you to find work and achieve your master's and go into this research, and how does this actually look in the real world? That's what you're flexing, right? Those critical thinking skills. And it's really interesting that, when you were sharing, it sounded like it was this idea, like you're developing a deeper understanding of one of these universal natural laws, the law of cause and effect, that if you're willing to put in the focus, reps, and sets, the outcome's going to take care of itself. Right. It's like that idea is like, if we go out to the beautiful vegetable garden my wife has, and she gets great, carrot seeds, as long as we continue to water them, as long as we continue to surround it with good soil and give it sunlight, a carrot seed is going to physically manifest from that. Right. But like you said, it takes time. Right. And it's just, again, it's just trusting that as long as you put in the focus, reps, and sets, like you said, great things are going to happen. It's a guarantee.
1,000%. And it's actually, what is it? The book that by Bill Walsh, the score takes care of itself. That's like the whole idea of, and that's something that, a lot of people ask me, what makes Queens football right now such a good football team? Because I was there through the times when we weren't doing the best. It was an amazing experience, and we were struggling a little bit, and then went through the transition year where Coach Snyder came in, and then things just started going crazy. And to be there to coach, to play, and then to be a fan now. You go to those practices and it's all about the little things. It's all about the details. It's all about the work. It's not necessarily that there's better athletes than there were before, which there's some really great athletes there, but it's the little things that matter, the little fine details, and the score takes care of itself. The work that is being done in those little things, not focusing on, okay, let me go and catch one-hand balls all the time and be fancy because that's what looks good, that's what gives you the best. No, it's okay, let me get to practice on time. Let me have my playbook nice and tidy so I can refer to certain plays when they're talking in film. Let me understand the quotes, the mantras of our team so that I could be more of a part of a unit. These things materialize into such massive results, and they're not, and that's not, it's incredible. It's incredible. And that's one example of massive different ways outside of sport that those little, the work, the little details, the little efforts that you put in shows up in the real world, It's awesome. Yeah, man. It's incredible.
And it's interesting that you share, right? Again, you reflect back on your journey, right? As a high quality athlete, as a player, then as a coach, and just now, like you said, as a high quality fan. And it's interesting how those little things matter, that attention to detail, that discipline. And what it really reminded me of is anyone is willing to put in the reps and sets when it's 25 and sunny, right? Yep. When you're up by 14 or you're in a 4-game winning streak. But I love where Coach Snyder always talks about, do you love football when it's 10 degrees and rainy in October, right? Are you willing to put the focus, reps, and sets there? So again, I love how those lessons have almost formed you into who you are today. And now you're developing these apply to, the quote unquote real world.
Exactly. Quote unquote. Yeah. 1,000%. 1,000%. And it's a journey every day. It's a journey that I continue to be self-aware and continue to take the things that I'm learning and continue to apply them and just continue to live in my purpose and put, always work to become the best version of myself. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, in this transition, right? You completed your master's, you had an opportunity. Just what inspired you to choose MLSE LaunchPad as kind of the next iteration at this stage of your journey of adventure?
So it's this is a loaded one. So for me, I don't know if anyone's aware with immigrant parents, when we moved to Canada, it was a straight, focus on school, go to medical school, go make the most money, because that's kind of the immigrant parent mentality of just get good grades, go get a good job. You don't need to be happy, just work hard type thing. And, that was a big motivation factor for me. As I came to Queen's University, my mind really just expanded in terms of the world, because I was kind of a very, very, not sheltered, but we didn't do a lot. We were very, very bubbled, like weren't allowed to do a lot. And so when I came to Queens, everything just kind of changed for me. And I kind of just continued to learn about myself, learn about who I was as a Black man, microaggressions, racism, sports, redefining myself outside my sport. This all took time. And when I went into my master's, so COVID was one of the most pivotal years of my life. COVID kind of changed a lot about the way that I think. It was the first time where I actually I was in a situation where, I couldn't control what life put in front of us. I wanted to, start training for the combine. I wanted to, my mind was okay, like, we'll do this medical school thing later, but we can still pursue this football thing. And once COVID happened and I started to redefine myself outside of just sport, and I really started to tap into my academic potential, because I was forced to have that time to do that. I was like, okay, Ben, God has given you insane abilities outside of just being an athlete. You can reach people, you can touch people. And so when I started coaching, me coaching was actually huge. Shout out to Kwame. Kwame is like one of my closest friends because he's seen my transition from a young man to an adult. He's seen me go from, being a football player, and then him being on the coaching staff was a huge reason why I wanted to also coach next to him. And that created such a huge bond and a huge friendship, and also both of us being Black men on the Queens football coaching staff. I don't know if anyone knows Queens football in the past. That's not very common, especially with the changing demographic of the football team. A lot of the young guys started to have somewhere to go to, not just like an OG like Kwame, but someone who actually probably has direct reference to, okay, you're going through this in your second year of a class that I took, and now that I'm teaching, come talk to me. You know what I mean? And that became very powerful for me. So I started kind of actualizing my understanding, okay, something's happening here. And then through my master's, going through research, really, really being in the space. And so I did my master's in muscle biochemistry and exercise physiology, a very, very difficult master's program. I published some papers, I did some research, things that I never thought that I would be able to do. My supervisor and I collaborated on a paper that talked about Black individuals and whites, or the paradigm of white, or the paradigm of white superiority, white intellectual superiority. And so I really started digging into, okay, like this, I'm doing this master's thing and this medical school thing is great, but I could be an example. Like someone that looks like me, that, went to, grew up in not the best neighborhood in Brampton. High school didn't have a football team, no funding, like should not have gotten a scholarship to Queen's University, should not have played at a high level for 4.5 years, should not have coached while doing a master's degree, should not have publications, should not, like, this is different. So I started to really realize that. And then I took a trip, like a soul searching trip, earlier this year across Southeast Asia for 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks, and continue to do a lot of that soul searching and continue to discover, okay, like there are people that are living, with very little, with what the objective, like, oh, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become this, do that. That's amazing when it's in alignment with your purpose. But I was really starting to discover, okay, like, why do I want to do these different things? And through that, I just continued to meet people, go to networking events, immerse myself in my purpose. And yeah, man, luckily enough, I didn't even know MLSE existed. I didn't know, well, I knew it existed. I didn't know MLSE LaunchPad was out there. I didn't know the work that they were doing. And a friend of mine who was in the position before, so the person that was in the position before was actually a good friend of mine, who used to go to Queens. And so he was leaving the position to become one of the head biomechanics specialists for the Raptors. And, he's doing great things right now. And he kind of introduced me to the role and told me a little bit about what they were doing. And I ended up connecting with the director, who was a friend of one of my mentors, Jonathan Hood, who I think you know. And they did some work together. And so it was just crazy. And during that time, I was helping Jonathan facilitate his mentorship program ahead of the game in the city of Toronto. And so a lot of intersectionalities there, where now this position comes up where I can put my research, my critical thinking, my credentials as a researcher, my ability to, utilize my knowledge not just to answer some complex molecular scientific questions that only some professor can understand, but to like understand what I've learned and apply it to different outcomes. Okay, how can we do different things? How can we ask different questions? How can we evaluate programs differently? How can we open our space to more youth? How can we serve more youth? How can we have a representative, someone who looks like me on a research team conducting high-level research, who can talk to kids coming in and out, Black youth coming in and out, who can fully be present with them, communicate with them in a way that they can understand, and also be like, yeah, like I went to Queen's University and I have my Master's of Science. This is a long, I got really, I got going there, but when I talk about it, it's really powerful because for me, I didn't know that when I was young, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know I could see that. And so when I had the opportunity to, you know, be in this position, it was a hard, long fought journey. MLSE is no joke. They don't play about their hiring process, but it was so amazing. And, you know, now we're working every day to continue to create change. So that is a long story, long version of, you know, this journey that I've been on and where I'm at right now and where I continue to try to move forward towards. I hope that was good.
You know, I love that, brother. And I love that you shared that version of it, because as you share that, it reminds me of like what Steve Jobs would often reference, like you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So it's interesting how all of these experiences growing up, and I know we talked about this earlier, had sort of just giving you a unique perspective, right? It's allowing you to tap into the power of your lived experience, right? In order to create change and make the world a better place. And I just think of all the things that had to happen, right? Like, you know, having, you know, your mentor, you know, Jonathan Hood, right? Like just, you know, sort of guiding you. And then, you know, you having a friend that you knew of Queens that was previously in this role that took the opportunity that, hey, you could be a good fit. Here's what this role is, right? And now it's like, think of all the things that had to happen just for you to be in doing what you're doing now. And if you ever need more evidence that life is all divine timing, like just look back at the journey and go, oh my goodness.
It's when I talk, like there's so many times, and it's hard because I get really passionate about this, but there's a lot of things that people just have to kind of go through to kind of like fully understand. Like when I finished my master's, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a 6-week trip fully to Southeast Asia. You know, I'm not any previously Benji would have been like, I need to get a job. Maybe I'm gonna do a PhD. Maybe I'm gonna work in like a pharmaceutical sales industry where I'm making big bucks and da da da. And I was just like, for the first time after the trials and tribulations I went through my master's and after the adversity that I went through in the past, and I was like, you know what? Let's take it slow. Let's utilize God's timing rather than force certain outcomes for ourselves. And you really don't, like, divine timing is one of the most powerful things that can only be actualized once you just let go of control. Obviously, continue to do the right things, but just understand that there is power and there is things that happen, and we will never, ever, everything, someone quoted this, they said, everything that happens to us is meant to happen. We just don't know it. And it's hard because sometimes really bad things happen, but it's like, so ever since I really started to try to adopt that mentality, divine timing, you know, if this didn't work out then, there was something else that was open for me. If this works out now, it might be opening a door for another, you know, it's just step by step. And so, yeah, man, divine timing is powerful. It's huge. It's huge.
And it's interesting, you know, it's, you know, again, I know you spend a lot of time with Kwame, and, you know, he's a big, like, words, right? And I think that's why we've always connected is, you know, words are powerful. But you think back to this idea of, you know, you challenging yourself, like you have formed this habit of, I want to do one uncomfortable thing, you know, every day. And it's interesting how even just that simple idea, right? Like, I'm going to do one uncomfortable thing every day. Like anyone can do something uncomfortable, right? Could go for a run, go have a cold shower, do one more push-up than you're used to. Like, it could be really anything. But you having that sort of like discipline, right, of spirit, mind, body, allowed you to have the courage to unplug after the masters. I'm going to go 6 weeks. I'm just going to go Southeast Asia. I'm just going to experience life. I'm going to go on this new adventure. It's going to open up my mind. And it's interesting how that willingness to sit with discomfort, because I'm sure it didn't feel warm and fuzzy, right? Because everyone else says, oh, finish school, go get a high paying job. And you had, no, I'm just going to go for 6 weeks. I'm going to go, have some fun, go learn something in the process.
Scary, man. It was scary. Oh, it was so scary. It was, and anyone that knows me, I'm very type A. I'm always like, I need to know what's going on, And it was like, it's just so powerful, man, because it's like, especially in this, I realize like in this climate that we live in, it's tough to be able to do those things, because people are very comfortable being comfortable. People are very, very, very comfortable being comfortable. And I sometimes catch myself doing that. Like I try to deliberately wake up. I remember when I came back at first and I didn't have a job, and I would wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, and come back and just sit there like, okay. And I would just do that just because I was like, okay, like let's just train your, because I was manifesting, like train your mind. You're gonna start working a high, you're gonna start being in a very, very good position really soon. I started, like what Kwame says, it's like I started speaking things into existence, and I started prepping my mind and my body to do things so that to do the hard things, so that when the hard things came, I knew what it was like. I started prepping, you know what I mean? And so, and it's unnecessary sometimes to people. It's like, why do I need to put myself in uncomfortable situations? Life is already uncomfortable. I get it. But again, like I think a lot of people are happy being mediocre in this climate, and I have no problem with that. That is sometimes, it's good for your mental health. You don't want to overly exert yourself. Fully understand that. But for me to see, again, I'm a very spiritual person, see what God has done through my life and how impactful things have just shaped around, because I've just like had a mind shift of become the, if something is not contributing to you and your growth, take yourself away. Simple. Makes making decisions a lot less hard.
Yeah.
When you just know, okay, this is not conducive to my purpose and it is not in alignment with my core values. I'm saying no. Simple. It's been incredible, and I'm continuing to work on this, man, because it's hard. It's hard. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. We got to give ourselves a break sometimes, but we just got to continue to be intentional,
Yeah. And it's interesting. Again, I did not realize that you had, given yourself permission to go experience life in Southeast Asia. Interestingly enough, when my wife and I left teaching, it was part of it was to, sort of leave the confines of the classroom. So, to be able to travel with our kids more. And one of the things we could agree on was, okay, let's go to Southeast Asia for 2 months with the kids and just experience life on different. And like you, I found that space of kind of leaving what was safe and comfortable. And again, that trip challenged me spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. What are you doing with your life? But I found it did actually give me the space to actually just rediscover, remember what actually brought me joy, like what actually allows me to feel like I'm living a life of purpose, of meaning, of significance. So I'm curious, what was an aha you took away from that trip?
What was an aha? There were two ahas. The first aha is, gosh, damn, I love myself. I didn't love myself in terms of like, I love spending time with myself. I didn't know myself. And going on a trip like that, where I was taking a 36-hour flight, I had some friends that I met there, but a lot of the traveling was alone, and I just had to sit in my thoughts, or like just like be, or just like try to navigate. That was one aha. Like, Ben, like you when I feel like when we're children, everything is amazing and we actually we're fully blissful and happy. And we grow up and it's like, there was this book that Kwame actually introduced to me called The Four Agreements. And it talks about like how the older we get emotionally poisoned. It's like our brains get like, yeah, and we forget who we are. We forget the sole person who's responsible for us, which is us. So taking that trip was like one of the first. It triggered like a chain reaction of just doing things for myself and becoming just more familiar with myself and more familiar with, my traumas, my fears, my strengths. That was one first aha. The second aha was that where there's a will, there's a way. That trip was the first time I'd ever traveled outside this country since I moved from Ghana 16 years ago. The last time I went somewhere else was like a beach vacation to Miami and Team Ontario, Texas. Like that was I remember my mom being like, Ben, I will literally pay your ticket so that you can stay home. And I was like, Mom, I have to do this. They're like, why do you have to do this? And I was like, I don't know why. I don't know what's telling me to do this, but I just have to. I just have to. And I didn't know what traveling was. I didn't know about Expedia. I didn't know about hostels. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to book a ticket. I didn't know how to navigate my way to the airport. And so that made me it opened my mind into just realizing that as human beings, we stop when we have a way out. If we see a way out, we stop. When there's no way out, we figure it out. And I remember being in Southeast Asia, being in Thailand, and they don't speak English, but you just got to figure out how do you communicate with people, how do you make friends, how do you use that, how do you utilize the friends that you have and discover new things. So that really it opened up a space for me to just understand that hardships hit and there's like an initial moment of like this is a lot. But then your body just like slowly calms down and is like, okay, like we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So that two things, let me just reiterate it. The first thing was learning and just falling in love with who I am again. And then two, just learning that where there's a will, there's a way. If you got to figure it out, you will figure it out. So yeah, that was it for me. That was it for me.
And again, I love those. Again, just such powerful affirmations, right? Like again, it sort of prompted you to study your greatest resource, which is yourself, it sounds like. And two, that idea, like, again, I'll figure it out, right? Like, and it's interesting, again, you talk about, why certain people come into our life at the right time. That is one of the affirmations that is my go-to. I'm in the process of figuring it out. And I find, do I lose sight of that sometimes? Absolutely. But I do find whenever I say it, whenever I write it, whenever I stop and really really say those words, really embody those words, I find it always brings me back to center, back to balance, and it allows me to sort of refocus on
100%.
what my mission is.
1000%. And it's hard. Like again, a lot of times, like I say this stuff to it's like when I talk about this, it's like I'm trying to reaffirm myself because it's hard trying to wake up at 5. It's hard trying to do hard things every day. Even right now, I want to book a trip and go somewhere else, but now I'm just like I gotta go through this again. Like it's hard. And so that's kind of something that I just want to remind people, like people, even the most amazing speakers and influential like gurus or it's constant work. It's like constant. It's that, and that's that. It all goes back. That's like the micro level of doing the work. It's just like, okay, just a one step at a time. Am I gonna eat properly today? Am I gonna reward myself today? Am I gonna do something good for myself today? Am I gonna, be nice to my parents today and tell my brothers that I love? Just like little things that might sound so corny, and it's just a way of reaffirming myself and reassuring myself and validating myself that I'm honoring my commitments. I'm doing the things that I'm telling myself to do, which then snowballs into okay. And I say one of my mantras is when you're disciplined in one area of your life, you become disciplined in every area of your life. Sometimes you just got to attack one thing at a time and things start to fall in place. You know what I mean?
interesting that you share, and it sounds like this idea of like building that trust muscle with yourself,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like it's
Exactly.
that idea of
Exactly.
like, and I actually posted something about this. This is like the simplest and easiest way to build trust with others, and more importantly yourself, is simply keep the promises you make to yourself. If you say you're going to get up at 5, get up at 5. If you say you're going to drink 2 liters of water, drink 2 liters of water. If you
Mhm.
say, if you make a commitment that you're going to say I love you more to your loved ones, say it more. And it's funny
Same.
how just doing that simple practice and
It's so
honoring that, like
simple.
you talked about, that's what creates
It's
change in
simple.
your life.
100%, 100%. And it's important. I think something that I struggle with is, sometimes when I don't do these things, I get really hard on myself because I like to live my truth, and I have I have a really strong internal dialogue system that it's just like always there, like, man, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people like high functioning or people that are trying to strive for greatness, have this dialogue, and I'm sure you do too. But something that I want to kind of reiterate is like, if you have a day that you don't do those things, give yourself grace and come back to it. That's something I learned from football. Shoot, you told yourself you were gonna, let's say, you're gonna run this route this way, and then the something happened, and so you kind of drifted off your line a little bit, and then it's like, oh, why did I do that? Nah, like that would actually impact the next play. Like your negativity, like I didn't do this, it would impact the next play, and it impacts the play after that, and then now you just had a bad game, and that contributes to the team not doing as well as they could. So it's kind of coming back to like, okay, like, dang, I told myself I was gonna wake up at 5 today. I was super tired. I didn't wake up at 5. I it's okay. We'll do it again. Let's start again. One more. Just honor your commitments. Let's do it. If that commitment is every time I miss a commitment, I'll make up for it, then that's the commitment you honor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Giving yourself grace, honoring your commitments, but giving yourself grace as well. And just reminding yourself, I'll get back to it. That's it.
And it's interesting you share that, right? Like, I often share this idea of next play mentality, right? Like the only thing
Mm,
you have is you get to choose your next thought, right? I
yep.
know Coach Snyder talks about, football is a game. It requires a reset mentality, right? They got to reset.
You said.
And it's interesting how, like you said, you understand that challenges, struggles, tribulations, adversity, obstacles, they're going to pop up from time to time. But really, that ability to go within and to realize, like, it's done, it's happened. What do I need to think now? What is the action I need to take right now to, like you said, make that even 0.1% degree shift?
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. It's and that's like it's so funny. This is the first time I realized that that comes from that whole coaching idea of reset mentality. You know what I mean? Like reset, you don't think about that when you're just thinking, okay, play. But now I'm like talking about just like life and just like honoring your commitments and giving yourself grace. And it's just funny how many things in this life are just like translatable. And and that just like goes. So it's really, I'm really glad you said that because it's like, oh, like that's what that is. Giving yourself grace is resetting. It's
Mhm.
literally next play. It's
Mhm.
literally who's gonna get back up when they get knocked down. That's literally it. Different
Mhm.
wording, same outcome, same thought.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's
So
it,
I'm
man.
curious, one of the things that, is really evident is you've chosen to be very intentional with who you surround yourself with. And again, through many, of our mutual connections, I know you have some strong and powerful people in your life, right? Like mentors, people that are just, open to sharing wisdom. I'm curious, if you could go back, right? Let's say to that 10-year-old version of yourself, and you had 30 seconds just to offer, one nugget of wisdom that would serve him on his journey to greatness. What words of wisdom would you share with him?
JT, man, you be asking the right questions, brother. Oh man, what word of wisdom? What word of wisdom? I think it will kind of it will be twofold. It'd be two things. Kind of goes back to what you talked about, surrounding myself with the right people. I would say, I don't know if 10-year-old Ben would understand this. Be careful who you put, and be careful who you put your energy into. You know what I mean? Be careful. Some people are batteries and some people are black holes. I think someone said, be careful where you put your energy into and who you give access to you. Because that ultimately equates to, you know, the surroundings, your who you are is a sum or average of the people you surround yourself with. So be careful who you put energy into and who you know what I mean, let have access to you. And I think the next one would be just let go. Just let go of control. That's it. Think let go of control. And I say that now, the 10-year-old Benji, but I'm saying that now to 25-year-old Benji too, because I still struggle with it every day. Just let go and let God. That's a big one, man. That's a big one. There's this prayer that I've been trying to reiterate to myself, and it's called the Serenity Prayer, and it goes, Father, give me Father, give me the knowledge to understand the things that I can't control, the strength to control the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I try to say that to myself all the time, because it's like, okay, like, you need to be able to discern between what you can control and what you can't control, but you also need to have the courage to control the things that you can, and just like be okay with the things that you can't. So just letting go. Yeah. Oh, that was a big one. That was a great freaking question, man. Oh, love it.
It's interesting as you were sharing the let go. I mean, that's something I challenge myself to do every day, like you again. And I think it's, you know, talking and spending time with enough, you know, high performers, you know, people like yourself and I, like, we have the ambition, we have the drive, we have this open-mindedness to aspire for more. But I find where we need to give ourselves grace is to learn how to harness that, right? And just realize that, you know, it's okay sometimes to, you know, you're not going to have all the answers all the time, and that's okay. But just giving yourself that grace and that compassion, harnessing that ambition, drive, and open-mindedness is really, I don't know, just makes life feel a little bit lighter.
Makes life feel lighter, man. It really does, because like if you think, man, we cannot do this. We can't do this life by ourselves. You know, we cannot control I would go mad. And you know what I mean? Just the idea of just like being okay with the outcome and just understanding that, you know, there's a higher purpose, or there's greater reasoning for it. It almost eases my anxiety a bit. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's definitely warming. It's working through it every day. I hope 10-year-old Benji would listen to me. He probably wouldn't, but
yeah. It's all good, brother. So I'm curious. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, right? Like maybe there's something you shared in here that, you know, really resonated with them, or maybe it's someone that would love to learn more about the work that you're helping to create at MLSE LaunchPad. Yeah, is there any way that people can learn more or support you? And yeah, I'm just curious, is there anything they can do, you know, social media wise?
Yeah. Honestly, if there's any questions and if people want to just get to know me better, just reach out to me. JT will put all my socials in here after, but you know, reach out to me on LinkedIn, you know, on Instagram, Benji's World, and I've been taking a little bit of Instagram hiatus, you know, but I will. Yeah, I am all over the place, and I love mentorship and coaching and talking to people. As you can tell, I just love connecting with people. I love hearing people's stories, and I love sharing my story. I'm such a passionate person, and everyone else asks me how I have so much energy. I'd say people just bring me life, just so yeah. I'm always open to, you know, meeting anyone. So yeah, all the socials, all the contact information, and if you want to know more about MLSE Launchpad and MLSE Foundation and what we do, you can go on the website. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, give you some more information. But yeah,
Absolutely, brother. Now I'll be happy to share all of those places, all those social handles, and just different ways where people can learn more and follow along on your journey. Benji, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, brother. I want to acknowledge you for the great son you are, the great man, the great teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing that has been really evident, in the time I've known you is just how open you are to growth. Like I just think of, again, these strong and powerful leaders that you have allowed into your life, and how you're just like an open vessel to like actually listening to the words of wisdom they want to share, based on their lived experience. So I just want to thank you for providing me that reminder that, like, again, one of the keys to a beautiful life is an openness to new opportunities, new people, and just new blessings. So thank you for that, brother.
Thank you. Hey, man. JT, I want to continue to connect and get to, man, I just, the energies, you can feel positive and intentional and just good people. You can feel that energy, and I'm just really, really grateful again. The minute you told me, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? I said, heck yeah, man. Like I am all about the work that you're doing, and I love to get to know you more, and yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really, really appreciate it, because this is the stuff. I don't care if I was up since 3 a.m. This brings me life. This brings me energy. These conversations are so powerful, So again, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
It's all good, brother, and thank you for your words. I receive them with my open heart. So, folks, Benji dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates greater results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, or just someone you think that would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world would be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.